Okay, let me introduce my partner, Lauren Melius, who graduated from cartography in 1976 from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He worked in regional planning in Wisconsin for 5 years and then joined Global Mapping in 1986. Global Mapping International's focus is to develop, or was to develop, computer tools for mission areas and mission organizations. And Lauren's focus was to help missionaries with mapping, including training others in mapping software and assisting mission workers in creating their own custom mapping. In 2017, Global Mapping closed, but Lauren was fortunate to be able to continue his mapping work as a staff volunteer of Lightsys Technologies Services, a small organization in Colorado Springs. Actually, Lauren and I have known each other for pretty much 35 years, and that takes you back to almost the beginning of personal computing for missions. And so we'd like to give you a little bit of a brief overview of the beginnings of computerized mapping, and then identify four principal ways that you can use mapping with your ministry information in various capacities. Lauren, you want to begin?
Yes. We want to just start with a history of mapping. This is before my time. In 1980, Bob Waymeyer, a missions researcher working with OC International, got a computer for use in OC's strategy and research department. He began building databases on Harvest Force and Harvest Field data. Late 1981 or early 1982, Bob visited Patrick Johnston and was impressed with the colored maps Patrick had produced. These were made by hand and showed various themes. For example, percent Christian of areas of people, location and status of unreached people, percentages of church growth. After this visit, Bob went to a computer trade show and saw a person making colored maps with a computer. Finding out that data could be associated with the map, he saw potential of this speeding up Patrick's making of maps. Bob realized this would be a great tool for mission researchers, and so a vision was born. And of course, you see a picture of Bob, bottom right corner there. Later in 1982, God brought Bob in contact with a sharp computer person, Bill Dixon. Bill introduced another sharp computer person, Pete Holtzman, to Bob. Bob presented the challenge and opportunity of digital mapping for missions to the two men. At this time, mapping software was more prevalent on larger computers and not personal computers. Pete gathered a team of several other men to develop mapping software for a personal computer. It was called Globe. Bob Waymeyer and another OC missions director, Jim Montgomery, both had a vision to collect and use Harvest Force and Harvest Field information. In 1983, the Global Mapping Project was born as a project of the U.S. Center for World Mission, now World Ventures, in Pasadena, California. In 1983, Pete's team produced their first colored computer map, which is shown here on the screen. It showed ministry data for Guatemala. This was a great timing since Jim Montgomery was making a trip to Guatemala. Jim took the map and used it to challenge the Christians and churches to see areas where there were few churches. The map did a good job visualizing where churches were needed in Guatemala. It proved to be a great communications tool. In 1980, the Global Mapping Project was established as a nonprofit organization. The picture here at the top right was taken in 1986 at Global Mapping. It's a Global Mapping Project staff. I'm there, and some computer equipment. Bob Waymeyer, seated to the right, And at
But
the left
wait,
is Mike O'Rear, who later led global mapping from 1991 to 2011. A number of maps were created with a test. Oops. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yeah, a number of maps were created with a test version of the global mapping software. A collection of maps of Latin America were put together in the 1987 CONMEBOM Atlas. It was published in support of the Latin American mission movement. And then next slide. Okay, and in 1988, Global Mapping Project was renamed Global Mapping International, as you see the logo in the bottom left corner. The creation of the mapping software was going slowly, and the team diminished in size as time went on. God guided Pete to the president of a secular company developing mapping software. Pete was hired to create mapping software which would run on a personal computer. He had a written contract. GMI could sell the software at a reduced price to mission organizations. The software created was called Atlas GIS, first in a DOS version and later Windows. Distribution to the mission community was begun in 1990. This GMI language points and areas, and Warren had a role with this. The work was eventually turned over to SIL. Another database was first level administrative areas. Country level statistical data from Operation World was another data set. The bundle product was called Global Ministry Mapping System. And top here on the slide, you see a 1040 window map. The 1040 window concept was developed in 1990 by Pete Holtzman and Louise Bush. An area between 10 degrees north latitude and 40 degrees north latitude was needy spiritually and economically. The 1040 box was named 1040 window since it presented a window of opportunity to minister to the area. In 1995, GMI initiated its partnership with a large secular mapping software company, Esri, ESRI, to provide mapping software to the mission community. Then the next slide will show a map we did in 1996. And then that next slide, GMI worked with, and the map's drawn on the top there. GMI worked with International Mission Board, who provided the statistical data, and some other sponsoring organizations worked with there also to create a wall map showing the status of global evangelization of people groups world. Status evangelization means the percent of believers among people groups. This data had never been mapped at a global level previously. Actually, the map created some controversy. The geographic polygons used to represent the people groups were language areas. Red on the map shows World A, unreached or unreached groups. The International Mission Board now produces a global status of evangelization, global status of evangelical Christianity map. On the same slide, you see a picture of Warren, myself, and Bill Dixon holding a large world map we had printed. And at this time, we all were working at GMI. In 2003, the Global Ministry Mapping System was launched using the Esri mapping platform and a program called ArcMap. Some of you may still be using this, though it's getting out of use now. A number of ministries use the system to make maps. When GMI closed in 2017, the GMS was also discontinued. And actually, the same slide, you'll see a picture of John Hurst, who was president at GMI between 2012 and 2017. Anyway, just wanted to give you a little history of GMI, and Warren will take it here.
Yeah, we'll move a little quickly and introduce the idea that 30 years ago or so, we worked together at Global Mapping in the 1990s. What we'd like to do is offer a overview of 4 different ways in which you can use mapping in with your ministry information. The first one would be computer graphics or clip art related mapping that is an excellent way to simply use location information if you need it without a whole lot of sophistication needed. Open source mapping is another way to inexpensively begin to pull together resources in a computerized form. Commercial software is the next one. If you have a lot of information, ministry information over a large area of geography, computerized mapping GIS systems are the way in which many larger ministries manage their data. And then we'll look not today, but on Wednesday when we come back into what's currently happening within mapping, which is a collaborative mapping resource potential that's growing kind of exponentially in the mission world. Let me begin with that computer graphic understanding. Many clip art programs online are available for you to use if it's just geographic information and not a whole lot of sophistication that's needed, where you can use graphical software to be able to highlight portions of a map and put together an information info maps or infographics. That's a easy way and an inexpensive way to be able to use clip art, within a graphical package to make great maps and good information. A second way to use the map graphics is to be able to use existing GIFs or PDFs that are freely available online in some sources, and here's a few of them. The Missions Info Bank is a depository of mainly older mapping that's available for many areas of the world, for the regions of the world, and then the whole world altogether. Worldmap.org is also a slightly dated, but has hundreds of maps of various countries around the world that can be used and reproduced with appropriate referencing. Let me just look into this briefly. Yeah, next we're going to have Lauren talk about the open source mapping software option.
And these are just, there's more than these. These are two that we chose to mention. Nice thing, open source map software is free. That's the big advantage. QGIS I'm most familiar with. And I would say the GRASS would be the same thing. They're powerful and can do a lot. You can build maps from scratch. As all mapping software on desktop computers, there's a learning curve. Yet there are training materials on the web for QGIS too. QGIS is nice in that it runs on Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS. I think GRASS does run on other ones too, but it's nice to have software running on multiple platforms. But free is the best thing. So then we go on to the next slide, Warren.
We did want to offer to you just a little bit about mapping software. Geographic information systems have a basic components to them for those that haven't used mapping before. Map layers are a requirement in a mapping software, a commercial mapping software. This would be a file, a computer file with point, line, and area information for one layer or many layers of a rendering of the Earth's surface. And then the information or table about features on those layers is also registered in the software. And where the connecting point is the code or the actual ID of the information that's in the database, and it's also in the map, a rendered map, begins to come together with a one-to-one relationship in a one representation of the coordinates organization of the Earth. So as you gather map information in map layers, and then you have your own ministry data in tables, spreadsheets, or databases, the connection of those two is what a mapping software does very quickly. And when you put outline information with data, and then you're able to sort and represent that with lines and colors. This is the India distribution districts of 1991 with their Christian population. When you add the districts with that census information table and put it together in a map, you can make dozens of different maps in one small data set from census. So we wanted you to be familiar with that before we talk about where to get map layers and information statistics and how to assemble it with your own ministry information. Lauren?
And this slide just shows some web resources for map layers, which again, like where the points, lines, polygons that Warren mentioned. The first two offer geographic feature, political borders, like provinces, just second level, different levels of political administrative. And the last reference is really good. Actually has people group polygons and people group points at the IMB, the Open Data website. So that's a very good resource. And you can see a picture of the page down there. And then the next slide, we'll talk about the info table items that some suggested, some possible web resource locations for that. And the first one is demographic information like population of countries. And Warren mentioned the importance of codes to be able to link between the table layers and the mapping layers, the geographic information. And that's the HIS registry website is good, is the ministry code registry, giving some codes to help relate the geography to the statistical information. The nice thing about that is because in geography, for example, you can have the same name for two different districts in a country. So then your data, by having a code, you can distinguish between those two. Okay, and we can go on to the next slide, Warren.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then, yeah, we'll talk about computer mapping software, which I'll do in the next slide. And these are software packages that you can that have a cost usually. And a company called Esri produces two of these softwares, and one's called ArcGIS Online, which is of course online software. The other one is ArcGIS Pro. That's a desktop mapping software. It sort of has replaced ArcMap. And you can get these, there's a slide of ArcGIS Online. Again, it's you make your maps online. There's a free version that you can do some point mapping with. But then both of these would be available from as something called personal use software. And by that, the charge would be $100 a year in the US. It's probably going to be more overseas because Esri uses just different companies in different countries. So the charge can be different. I want to mention that last software, Felt, is something I've just recently found, and it's simple. It's fairly simple to use. Nice thing, it'll let you put a map. You can share a map to the web very easily. And anyway, it does have a charge of $36 per month, but you can do a lot for free. It has a free version, and there's just a lot of power. Come in there is ArcGIS Online again, how ArcGIS Online looks. But Felt is the name of another one. Okay, and anyway,
Let me
that's done
just
with that slide.
break in and mention, we will have all these references of websites in a single document for you. You don't need to record all of them. Thanks, go ahead.
You take a lot of notes or smartphone and taking pictures, yes. And yeah, I wanted to mention one last thing. There's an online group for Christian GIS people. The websites, you can see the website right there. And some of these, most of these probably work in secular occupations. There are some mission researchers, some mission mapping users in here too in the group. It's kind of a very informal group. The particular website page here, it has two good links. One is resources, webinars, which once a month we've been trying to do a webinar on a different subject, and we record the webinars, so you can see them there. And then there's another link for resources that will give some other possible locations of mapping, examples of maps and stuff. Most of these aren't all missions related, but most have a Christian emphasis to them. And there's also a Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube groups related with this that you become members of. And if you go to the About page, you can actually sign up for an email group also. And there's not always a lot of activity in the email group, but there is a group there and of mapping people. So, okay, and I'm done with that one.
Yeah, we'll be continuing this discussion into some elaborate collaborative mapping resources that are available in our second part to the mapping resources sessions on Wednesday. And these are our contact information made available for you.
Thank you, Warren and Lauren, for that perspective and those wealth of resources that you've shared with us there.